What up, world? Waxvillain, Seattle, Washington. You already know what it is. Welcome to Waxvillain and Friends Fireside Chat. My co-host Double P's pulling up. Living legend Danny Holloway's on the way. Keep it locked. We'll kick things off soon. I see you, Beaches. Examino Records in the building. You see what's playing? Appreciate everybody on the line. We see you. Danny, I just sent the request, brother. Click accept. Yeah. The woman every day and stand us so long. I said start dealing news and winner. The woman every day and Danny, I sent it one more time, brother. NBA Live girl in the building. We see it. DJ Nick Aguirre, Levin on the line. There he is. What's going on, brother? Yeah. What's up, P?
What's up, guys?
Okay. I'm in the dark. Can you hear me?
Good, though. Looking good.
You can hear me?
Crystal clear.
Okay.
It's just like the prep drill we did. Everything's coming across good. Contingency plans in play.
Damn, Paula looks good.
Oh, thanks.
She has a sexy T-shirt on too.
I was admiring actually the long plays and 45s behind her, but you know.
There's a real wax addict for you.
All right,
I'm amongst my peers.
He sees you standing in the doorway of a record store and pushes you aside so he can get inside to the wax he wants.
It happens all the time.
That's what you get for having all male friends.
That's not true anymore. There's a lot more women who do this now.
Thank God.
Yep.
Thank God, exactly.
It's nice. I love to hear the women's perspective when they DJ. It's different than a man, and it's nice to see the picture, the whole picture, as opposed to just coming from one gender.
I love that. And you're going to love next month then, because we got all the soul clubs coming through. We got Toronto. We got the Wayward Soul Club girls. Everyone's pulling up.
Damn.
Yeah.
Apella told me that your thing has exploded really quickly.
That's very kind of P. I appreciate that. I'm just working my face off, you know, trying to just share my passion. That's the best way to kind of put it. You know, it's the music that moves me that I want to share with everybody and be an extremely good neighbor along the way. So,
you know, what's interesting is that what used to be music business or music industry has now collapsed. So the people that you meet now along the way are really passionate about music.
Yeah.
You don't get those jokers that look like they should be selling shoes somewhere, you know?
I love that. All right. I see we got about 23 on the line. If y'all are ready, I'll go ahead and kick things off.
You ready, pal?
I'm ready.
Awesome.
All right.
I want to welcome everybody to Waxvillain and Friends Fireside Chat. I go by the name of Waxvillain. I am joined by my co-host, Paula Puente, a.k.a. Double P's. We got about 55 minutes of interview. There's about 10 questions. We got show and tell. We got the lightning round. Most importantly, I want to say Fireside Chats are similar to interviews. However, we take the time to do the research so that we're not duplicating other existing articles and interviews out there. But more importantly, we want to support and strengthen. Now, I absolutely love driving these introductions, especially for the guests. But tonight, there's nobody better that could do this introduction than Double P. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to P right now.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. So I want to start like this. The word OG is thrown around a lot these days, but I can't think of someone, at least in my circle, more deserving of that title than someone who's been in the music industry and on the record scene for 5 decades. Has a resume that includes producing a Heptones album, contributing to 3 Bob Marley records, signing mega groups like Sublime, a record exec at Island Records, interviewed Alan Toussaint, Stevie Wonder, Roberta Flack, the Rolling Stones, just to name a few, Dublab radio host, label owner, producer, DJ, promoter, international digger. So please welcome my close friend and fellow Taurus, the one, the only Mr. Danny Holloway. Woo! AKA Smoking Vinyl, AKA the man behind Himino Records. Welcome on, Danny. How you feeling today?
I'm feeling great, thank you. And that was the best introduction I've ever had.
Oh, wow.
There's one problem. That was a little too long. We're almost out of time.
I'm out of breath. You've done so much. I'm out of breath.
Yeah.
All right,
just
Danny,
imagine
we're going to
being
go ahead
me.
and, go ahead.
Go ahead.
We'll go ahead and start with question 1. And, instead of asking us to tell everyone who you are and what you've done, I would love it if you could kind of describe the events that led to this chapter of career for you, how you got here.
Yeah, I want to start back at the beginning real quick, just to let you know that my parents were young. I was the first one born, and so I got into 45s in 1955, and then so I was bit by the music bug. I played in groups through the 60s and stuff like that, and then when I was about 18, I kind of figured like I had 2 passions in life, and I had to figure out which path to take. It was either going to be music. And I know this sounds bizarre at this point, but the other one was surfing, right? So I was going to commit my life to one of those 2 things. And then I got focused, and I thought, there's no way I'm going to make a living out of surfing my whole life. So I made the decision. And ever since then, the promise I made to myself at 18 was that I would never work in any other field but music. And there's been a lot of ups and downs and crazy stuff going on, but I never did leave music. And so that's my passion, and that's what brought me here. And Eximino, I've had 4 labels now. Eximino started about 2010 or 11, around in there. And I had a partner when I first started, a fellow DJ, Aaron Parr. And so, we knocked out records. Only these guys like Funk Night and Coal Mine, they like throw out, 30 or 50 records a year. We were putting out 1 a year, But so we made our first series was 1 through 10 45s, and all of those sold out very, very quickly. And then when we got to 10, I said, like, we can't keep this winning streak is not going to last. So we have to do something different. And then I started a record club, and then we released 6 more 45s through the record club, and that did really well. So that brings us up to date. Then COVID came, and then our pressing plant went out of business, and now we're where we are now. And my next plan is to put out 4 45s for the next record club series as soon as I can. But I'm having some trouble with record plants right now. I came to a full agreement with a record plant a few weeks ago, and then they haven't sent me a sample of their pressings. So I have to keep moving.
Yeah,
that's tricky.
It's a common issue labels are having these days, unfortunately. Danny and I talk about this a lot, but we talk about how it's messed up how, our scene are the people who kind of brought the spotlight onto 45s, but these pressing plans are taking on these bigger artists, and that's who gets priority. And it's kind of messed up.
They're taking on major labels. That's the horrible thing, is that us little indies made the 45 format popular again, and then their ill-informed big labels come in and go, oh, I want 10,000 of this and all that, and we can't get on the presses, and they're like making these poor judgments on 45s that are easily accessible in other places.
Yeah, that's the truth.
So where do we go now?
So I want to talk about the label. Danny is the man behind the micro label known as Zimino Records. I want to introduce what I know about the label as a big fan, and then I'll let Danny pick it up from there. In August of 2021, the label turned 10 years old. I've personally been buying the releases since the first one, which I actually have right here.
Wow. That's a
Yeah,
dope one too.
if you look behind me, I have most of the like the more popular releases, but they're all great. But I'm a big fan. The label covers reggae, funk, soul, gospel, modern funk, which is a huge sound on the West Coast where the label originated. One thing I want people to know is that we have to credit Zemino Records for being one of the very first American labels to do reissues of the harder to find bombs on 45. Definitely ahead of its time. As we now see, we have many reissue labels on the scene, but not then. It was kind of new territory. It was borderline risque, and reissues were still under the radar. So, Danny, can you tell us how Zimino Records came about, and why did you think it was important to create the label at the time you did?
I missed the last part of the question.
I said, why did you think it was important to create the label when you did like 10, 12 years ago at that time?
Well, Aaron Parr and I were friends. I knew his parents when they were in the music business. So I was friendly with them. I met Aaron for the first time when he was like 10 years old. And then, we became friends, and he was at my house one day, and I used to keep all my heat around my record player. So I just go, bang, here's something. Have you heard this? Boom. Have you heard this? And I just kept going like that, and after about a half an hour, 45 minutes, he got fatigued, and he goes, haven't you ever thought of doing anything with this stuff? And in fact, I got close to doing the first gospel comp, but that label in Chicago beat me to it, and they even stole my name. Like the name for my package was going to be Good God. And a friend of mine knew them and told them my title, and they bit it. So once they bit my title, I just go, well, they've already done the first gospel comp, and I let it go. But Aaron came to my house a few months later, and we just, decided that if we joined forces, we could do this. And that's what happened. He stayed with me for 8 years, and then he's number one, a house head. And he had a label in the 90s called Worldship. And so house music started coming back into into the fashion again. And so, he's doing that now. He's doing his Worldship Music house label. And I always was kind of in control of all the releases on Eximino were chosen by me. The name was chosen by me, the logo, the distribution deals, the majority of all that stuff came from me. So it was kind of like it reflected me more than it did him. And it makes more sense for him to do Worldship, which he's wholly involved with.
Yeah, and shout out to Worldship. That's actually a great label. If you guys look up the releases on there, really some really good house music. If you're into that, it's awesome.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Recently, I think he had the number one club dance track on Juno.
On Juno, yeah,
out of the UK. So that's how good Aaron's label is.
It is great. So in regards to the label, what do you feel is your most meaningful achievement? What's your favorite release on the label, you personally?
It changes all the time. I mean, I'm proud of I'm in Love by Jennifer Laura. I really love Haya by the Clark Sisters. I get everywhere I go, people go, hey, I'm missing number 4, and there's, Paula is not the only completist, although she's probably the most completist of everything. But, people seem to like collecting them. And I think that in terms of the direction of the label, and the thing that I'm proud of to do with that is that we focus primarily on releases from outside the U.S. So we're spotlighting records that are from different countries around the world, sometimes Peru, sometimes Quebec, sometimes Paris, or whatever, we jump all around. And, so sometimes islands and stuff. We do have a lot of Jamaican records on our label, higher percentage than most people, but I don't know. That's always been a passion of mine since the early 70s. when I lived in England.
Yeah, so even though I listed off all those genres, the label covers of the cover, I noticed that all the releases have something something in common. They're all special, but what it is, it's like the soulful vocals in the songs. They all have soulful vocals.
I think that definitely is the number one. That's the link, the spine that goes through all our releases. Is regardless of the genre, it's going to be soulful.
Yeah.
It might be a soulful cumbia, it might be whatever, but that's our number one priority, is to have something with feeling, with soul.
Yeah, something that has always stood out to me about the label is each release was curated so thoughtfully, and each one is a gem. And if you look on the resale market, they've all climbed in value, and are super sought after all over the world. I know this one, I can't remember what the number's at now, but I recently looked and I was really surprised. So it's the Brazilian cover of Everybody Loves the Sunshine. Like,
right.
Whenever I'm out and I hear somebody play this at a party, like the crowd goes bananas.
Yeah, that's true.
It sounds so good, loud.
Well, that's another fetish of mine that goes back decades. I think I started in the 70s collecting records from around the world that covered tunes in their language. It's really frustrating to me if I find a release on from Peru or something, and I go, oh wow, here's a Sly and the Family Stone cut, and then they sing it in English. It's really a disappointment for me.
Oh, I know. When you see the label in like whatever country it's from, I know. I love covers. So yeah, I come across the same issue. I'm like, dang it. It's it's just like the Mexican pressing or the Argentinian pressing, but it's in English, and that's always a letdown.
One thing that we put out that a lot of people like is it was on the B side too. It was by the group from Helio Ardiente, and it was a Spanish sung version of The Message by Samande. So it blew a lot of people's minds because the collectors, hardcore collectors, knew about it. It only came out in 2 countries. It came out in Mexico, and what was the island of origin? Paula, do you remember?
I have the I don't have the original, but I have your copy of it. I don't think we put the country on there, but it's a Spanish speaking island, and I'm I can't remember right now. But I know anyway. I know in your earlier releases you kind of had to like switch around some of the titles and some of the artist names, which what I was referring to when I was saying how in the early days of doing reissues, like, people had to be careful with that. So things were changed around. And I kind of like that because I look at it and it's like, oh, like it's kind of like a game. Like, oh, if you look at it, you're kind of like, what do you think it is? It's a little obvious, but it's like a play on it. So if you can see that, it says Mike the Glove, rock with you. So you can guess who that artist is, but it's not what you think it is. You hear the song and it's a cover, like it's not the actual song, so it's pretty fun.
It is the actual song though. Anyway, yeah, we so we do a lot of covers and stuff like that. And then I think another unusual thing that we do at Eximino is that we double master everything. So we do a transfer at Stone's Throw Studios, and then we get the EQ the way we want it, and we use plugins and stuff to get it to sound more analog and all this kind of stuff. But we kind of finalize it there, and then we take it to a guy who's been mastering records since 1966. So we take it to the OG guy who really is an analog guy, and then sometimes he doesn't say that much, and sometimes he says, I gotta brighten the high end a little, but whatever. I swear it's kind of superstitious to keep this format going because it works, So I'm glad to double master, and people often praise our pressings and say, hey, this sounds better than the original copy, the original release. And that's because we alter the EQ. Like one of the first things I listen to when I go to master a tune is there one particular instrument that's driving the song? Is there a bass thing that's driving the song? Or whatever it is, I want to boost that. I want to make it more infectious for the listeners, So that, consideration goes into all that. And that's why our pressings can sometimes sound better than the original copies.
They do. You hear that word like described for records a lot nowadays. Like, oh, it sounds warm. Why do you like vinyl? It sounds warm. But all of these releases really touch on, they sound warm. They sound old. They sound good though.
Yeah. I mean, the whole idea behind the label, if you just look at it, it's meant to look like, like a small regional label from the early 70s or something like that, So
Yeah.
it's meant to preserve that vibe and preserve that simplicity. And the thing you said earlier about alteration of the label copy and stuff like that, we did a lot of it to amuse ourselves, because Jamaicans always get so many things wrong. They spell people's names wrong. They get titles wrong. They get all kinds of things. So we do it too. We make things wrong on purpose.
Yeah, it's one of the fun, quirky things as a digger you like to find too. When you see misspellings or something, it's really fun.
And then there's another thing that hardly anybody's ever mentioned to me, but if you look at the trail off wax at the end of the tune, that's where you're going to see our shout outs. So Paula's got shout outs, different people that have supported us and helped us put these records out. They're all in the trail off wax there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Every release.
So here's a quick question. I can hope you can clear this up for us. So how do you pronounce the label? Because I've heard so many variations of it now, and they all feel right. But what is the actual pronunciation?
Well, here's
what's acceptable.
I can tell you the correct way to say it, and then I can tell you the way that everybody says it, because I grew up in Long Beach, and Eximino was the name of a street that I walked on to get to my high school, which was called Wilson. But everybody in Long Beach, it doesn't matter whether they're Spanish speaking or not, they pronounce it Eximino, and that's incorrect. I still say it, and it's incorrect. But the way you should say it is Jimeno.
Oh,
yeah.
I used to correct people all the time, and then I stopped because people just associate. They just call it what they call it now. And I said, well,
it's so frustrating.
It's just become that.
I walk up to a Spanish speaking person in Long Beach and say, how far to Jimeno to Eximino, and whatever they say Eximino. That's all I can say is that every Spanish speaking person I've ever met in Long Beach says Eximino, and I find it so frustrating. I wish somebody would say it right.
It's funny, and so does Siri. Siri mispronounces everything, but that's how she pronounces it too.
Well, see, we have other Spanish names in Long Beach, like we have a street that begins with a J called Juanapero, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so people always, whenever anybody says, do you know where Junipero is? We go, they're not from here. They're not from here, man. So I was even thinking at one point, like, if I make a subsidiary label for Eximino, I should call it Juanapero.
I like that. That's good.
It's another Long Beach Spanish
You should
street,
do it.
Right?
Spanish records. Yeah, I like that.
So anyway.
That was super insightful. I got a couple of follow-up questions. One, I'm really glad that you asked that question, because I was trying to say it as fast as I could in the intro so that nobody would catch it. But, as I was looking at the body of work, Danny, I'm so glad that you took the time to really explain the identity and the blueprint of the label, because that means a lot to some of us collectors. And as I looked at the body of work, I was like, man, once again, there's like 100 records that I've never seen before or heard before. P, someone who's been following as long as you have, since the 10, 11-year run, is there like a starting place, or do you have certain favorites that you could maybe recommend?
Yes, I have a whole pile here.
Whoa! Okay.
All right. I'm going to...
Paula, I'll tell you where I think it is. It's in the middle of the first 10 45s. We had 3 45s in a row that was sung by women from Jamaica. And
that's where I'm going.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, honestly, I would start here. This is probably still on the affordable end. Can you see that? So that's Juicy Fruit by Susan Cadigan.
That's a good one.
Okay. It's really good. You can still find copies of this. Actually, if anybody wants one, I probably have like 10 extra copies.
That was a big favorite at Sweater Funk in the Bay.
Yeah, it's a great one. Another one. Okay. I would definitely say everybody loves this tune, and here's an affordable copy of it. It's Jennifer Lara's I'm in Love.
That's the original copy, the original color right there.
Yeah. So actually haven't looked at the value of this one lately, but check it out. It's definitely more affordable than the original. And this one, I mean, this is just a banger. It's the Nairobi Sisters Promised Land dub. Even if you don't know the song, when you hear the song, you know the song. It's a great
Well, it was sampled by Tribe Called Quest.
Yeah, that's what it's popular for. But yeah, those are female vocals. So some of my favorite releases.
Very cool. Very cool. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask this. I would love it if each of you could talk about how you all connected and what you remember about each other that first meeting, just so all the viewers know where the connection is.
Well, I can tell you the first time that we connected, Paula wrote me like kind of a fan letter type of thing, saying she heard my mix. I did a Latin mix on Dublab, and so you know, she contacted me about that. And then you should take it over now, pal. What happened next?
So I've known Danny for about 12, 13 years now. And yes, I reached out to him after discovering a few of his mixes that were heavily Spanish and Brazilian influenced. I actually played Danny's music for my father, and he really enjoyed it. So that's what prompted me to search out more of his releases. We linked up in Los Angeles, and we've been connected, bonded ever since.
Well, wait. You should explain also that your dad he's not Peruvian. Say what he is. He's something.
My dad's from Chile, and Chile. I've talked to Waxvillain about this in other interviews, but yeah, he's kind of the backbone of my music interest and journey. So if dad likes something, like I know I'm onto something good. We have very similar tastes. So he's like, you know, the Fania collector in my family. So as soon as he was asking more about Danny, you know, that's what sparked my curiosity, and I started looking out. And it's like I went straight to the source. I said, hey man, what else do you have out there, you know? Yeah. And then when you start digging into somebody like him and you start discovering all of things he's been a part of, it's just mind-blowing. And then getting to know him as a friend on a personal level and just hearing a lot more stories, it's really crazy. He's like one of my most interesting friends, really.
Are you talking about me?
I'm talking about you. One of the things I really appreciate about
I was nearly about to ask, who is this person? I'd like to meet them.
He's a great guy. But one of the things I appreciate most about Danny is that he's got an open mind and a great ear when it comes to music. He appreciates music as a whole and has never really pigeonholed himself into one specific type of genre or scene, which in my days of, you know, being young and into music, I've come across a lot of people that were, you know, kind of just into what they were into and not much outside of that. But he's one of the very few people I know that really encompasses music as a whole, in many genres. He's been one of my earliest supporters in my own endeavors, always stood for women, seriously, in our scene, and always motivates me into slaying any projects. So he's just like my rock. When I doubt myself, he's like, girl power, you got this, you know? So yeah. Thank you.
Well, she really is a full package. She's really smart. She's a big fan. She's passionate. She has great taste. So, you know, you put all that in one person, and she's, you know, kind of like has a large presence online. So, you know, there's no weak points to her game. And she's very, very, very smart. Like, so, you know, I like talking to her from that perspective, because even a very old, weak man like me, you know, you need advice from somebody sometimes, or a feedback. And so she's always solid. And, you know, we're both Tauruses, so our feet are on the ground. You know, we're not kind of bouncing off the walls or anything. We kind of, you know, do things that remain, that are sensible to us, you know?
Yeah. Very cool.
Even though it sometimes means taking a risk, you know, you have to, you know, sometimes you have to go with your heart, and not, people in this country are trained to seek material possessions and money, and it's a huge distraction, and it can also decay your health and all kinds of stuff, you know. So you know, it's a big subject. But when I lived in England for 5 years, they had a different type of culture, and it really influenced me. And they appreciated brains over money. You know, if there was two people standing there, one was a kind of a dumbass, but he was rich. In our country, people kiss up to the dumbass, you know, but not over there. They kiss up to the smart guy, even if he's homeless. You know, if he's well read, they want to talk to him.
Mm.
Difference of culture.
The difference of culture. So that's what I love about traveling is the status quo changes in different parts of the world, you know? And so you go, and when you see that, you go, wow, there's different ways that society can operate, even though I was raised in this one particular way.
Yeah. So next I'd like to get into like record digging. Let's talk about that. So let's talk about digging for records. Really, there's few people I can call at the spur of the moment to drop everything and get on the road to go digging. Danny and I have had some memorable trips, but being on the road is when I hear the best digging stories. So Danny, please tell people about some of your favorite record digging trips, and please start off with my favorite, Brazil.
Yeah, I was going to start with that too.
Good. What year was that? Let's start there.
It was 2004, and what happened with me was I was fortunate enough to have 2 or 3 bits of money come at me. I think I had a couple of gigs I got paid for, and then I got part of an inheritance, and so I had a lot of money all of a sudden, you know, and which I wasn't used to. But as a record collector, you know, especially once you've been around a long time, you know, if you're chomping at the bit, sometimes you see other people doing it, and you go, man, if I only had X number of G's right now. If I had 2 G's right now, I could go in and parlay this deal where I could get these records at an amazing price if I only had 2 G's, right? And you know, the guys that are really big in this game, I know one guy in particular, he has 10 G's in one pocket, front pocket, and 10 G's in the other front pocket, and he's ready to drop them anytime somebody's got something worthwhile. And so when I went, what happened with me is I got that thing, and I called up a travel agent, which people don't really use anymore. But I said, I want to do a record digging trip. So, you know, I told him the countries I was most interested in. And for a month, I went to Brazil, I went to Nigeria, I went to Ghana, I went to England, I went to Jamaica, I went to New York City. You know, I went to all those places looking for records. And so when I got to Brazil, my buddy there, one of my biggest buddies, you know, in the music world in LA is B+ Brian Cross, and he'd already made the Brazilian connection. You know, he's got movies that he made and all this kind of stuff. So he'd been down there like 20 times.
Wow.
So I've already met DJ Nuts, but you know, it was B that said, when you get there, contact Nuts. He knows where all the records are. So what I didn't realize was Nuts is in Sao Paulo, and I have to go to Rio as well. There's no way I'm going to Brazil and not going to Rio. But I didn't realize that there was a rivalry between the two cities, right? And Nuts never wanted me to go to Rio. So every day he'd say, Danny, I'm going to take you today to a store that has a 40,000 7-inches, you know? And I go, oh, cool. You're like, I'm not going to go to Rio today, right? And then at nighttime, he'd say, tomorrow I can take you to a barn with 500,000 records, you know? So he did that to me every day, right? And finally, I just had to go, no, dude, I have to go to Rio. And I left. But so this one day, he came up and he goes, there's 3 stores that I'm going to take you to today. And it was in an old part of Sao Paulo that was an Italian neighborhood. And all 3 of these stores was owned by one person, and they're within 3 blocks of each other. The first one he takes me to has 500,000 albums, and I got tired just looking at him. You know, and I'm more of a 7-inch guy anyway, so I go, let me see the other 2. The second one was a very modest import store, and I just go, well, I can see those anywhere. And then the third one he took me to was just like my dream place. It was like, you know, 40,000 7-inches that looked like they hadn't been picked over too much. And so I can't speak any Portuguese at all, but Nuts asked the guy, we got there like 4 or something like that, and the guy said he was going to close at 5:30, and it was just so frustrating, right? But Nuts is a real persuasive guy, and he goes, you know, he's a wealthy foreigner and all this kind of stuff, you know. And so the guy goes, well, I'll stay open as long as he wants to dig, right? So I stayed there till like 1 o'clock in the morning. I had a chair that I sat in and a chair in front of that with my portable on it. And I never got up to go to the bathroom. I just went, I would only listen to about 5 seconds of a tune. And I go, if this is anything like what I'm looking for, I put it in my good pile, you know? So at the end, I had like a couple 145s or something like that. And Nuts came back to pick me up at 1 o'clock in the morning. And so he was negotiating with the guy to find out how much he wanted. I think he initially said something like $6 a record. And then I kind of computed in my head, I'm gonna have to put some back because I didn't get a chance to hear that much of him. And then the minute I said that, the guy kind of paused behind the counter and Nuts started hammering him in the deal. It turned out I got him for 60 cents each, you know, 1/10 of what he was asking for.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say $6 sounds like a lot in that time for that kind of trip. But
at 60 cents, you can take any kind of gamble. No problem.
Yeah, exactly. Those are good, well priced as well. Used to be. What were you looking for though? Like, I know you're not somebody who just looks for breaks, and I know a lot of guys went to Brazil just to look for that. Like, what were you like picking up then?
You know, I think you kind of pointed this out earlier, that really the number one thing I am is a music lover. So I can find country and Western that I like. I can find, you know, I can find corny music. I used to like Johnny Mathis, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I just love good music. I love good melodies and stuff like that. So, you know, my main thing has always been like a funky kind of vibe, you know, is something that I've always kind of been attached to and stuff like that. But I have very versatile taste. So when I was down there, I think one of the main things I was trying to do was get deep bossa, you know, like in our country, we have all these releases when it was a fad and everybody all the jazz guys put out a bossa album and stuff like that. Well, I just wanted to hear the really, really good stuff. There's a label called Elenco, you know, and the name, when it translates, it kind of means cast. Like if you watch a movie, the cast will be called, in Brazil, it would be called Elenco, right?
Yeah.
So that's where it got its label. And the guy that owned it, I think he used to work at Philips down there. And Philips was a real progressive label that had good bossa and stuff like that. And then this guy started his own label, and he only put out 60 albums. And I think while I was down there, I got half of them. I got because they weren't expensive, I could get them for like $5 or between 5 and 10 or whatever. So I came back with 30 Elenco albums. So I was looking for bossa. I was looking for funky stuff. You know, I got the 45 of João Donato, Cala Boca Menino, with Amazonias on the other side. That's like a real collectible 45.
Yeah.
Goes for like at least a couple hundred, you know. So yeah, that's some of the stuff I was looking for. Well, I went to the number one record store there for diggers and stuff, and it's a place called Disco something with a 7, Disco 7 or something like that. And it's in one of those arcades. They have a lot of arcades there and record arcades where there's a bunch of record shops all in this round kind of arcade. And so some people took me there. Oh, actually, it was Nuts again. So Nuts took me there.
Shout out to Rodrigo.
Yeah.
He's definitely got that on lock.
So I go there, and I wasn't that well educated in Brazilian music. So I had to really listen a lot. And then I realized that the guy that owns the shop was watching me very, very closely. And so I realized that I couldn't smile or nod my head or do anything that made him think I liked a particular record, or else it was going to cost me more money.
You couldn't give him any tells, yeah.
Yeah, so I had to have this completely solemn face, never nod my head, and just go, okay, this is going in my good pile, you know? And at the end of it, I think I did almost what Egon told me when he went to Eddie's Three-Way in New Orleans. You know, I said, how many records did you get there? And he put his hand up to his waist, you know?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I did it there. And actually, now that I mentioned Egon, so the owner was very, very grateful for, and dude, I didn't even spend that much money. Like what I bought should have cost me like thousands, and it cost me $1,800, right? And now it's probably worth about right? So he was very, very grateful and stuff like that. And then further on in my trip, I was in New York, and I went to a store there, and I can't remember what it's called, but it was the best collector store in New York at the time, run by English guys, right? It's not A1, but it was one that was around for a few years. So Egon was walking around in the store like he owned it. He was going behind the counter and all this kind of stuff. And then he goes, wait, were you in Brazil recently? And I go, yeah. And he goes, that guy can't stop talking about you. He goes, he can't wait for you to go back and all this kind of stuff, you know?
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, it's pretty fun. And at the same time, Egon gave me one of the ultimate compliments I've ever had in the music game. Now, everybody knows that at a certain point, Egon was really into deep funk music along with Cut Chemist and Shadow, and they had the Brain Freeze tape and all that kind of stuff. And so he said, you're the guy that turned me on to funk.
Wow.
And I go, what? What are you talking about? And he goes, well, that Meters album, that comp that you put together in Ireland in 1975, that's what turned me on to funk music when I was in high school. And that was the thing that started me on this path. And it just kind of blew my mind. Like I initiated Egon's music taste in music like that. It kind of blew my mind.
No, I think you've actually influenced a lot of people. You've definitely influenced myself. I know I've heard stories, you know, when people bring you up and say the same. So I don't think you should be surprised at that. You had mentioned Eddie's Three-Way in New Orleans, and people infamously talk about that place, but you actually went there. And
Yeah.
For those who are not familiar on here, could you please explain the digging situation there?
Okay, well, there are 3 shops originally. I think it was in the late 60s. And again, they're all owned by one guy named Eddie, and that's why it's called Eddie's Three-Way.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all in different parts of New Orleans. And so, you know, one by one, they started to close down. And then he had, it took all the records, once all 3 closed down, he took all the records and put them into this one store that was on the top floor of a 2-story shopping precinct. But the neighborhood was really, really rough. Like, you have to be careful to even go in there in the daytime. And so what happened was you had to take a staircase to get up to the 2nd floor where the records were, but the staircase got somehow got knocked away or was taken away or something. There was no more staircase. And so you'd have to go there and check in with Eddie. And then Eddie would pull out this 30-foot ladder and lean it against the building, and you climb up and go in through a window. And then once you got in there, you know, New Orleans weather is very humid. You're in this, you know, very kind of closed, small room. It had about 500,000 45s. They were not organized in any way. They're thrown all over the floor. I heard from people that they saw a rat there. So it was kind of,
you lost me at that.
It was spooky. Like you had to wear gloves because, you know, there was a lot of bacteria there. But so like Egon, I talked to him about what he got. He got there early and only paid $2 a record. I paid $6 a record. And he got Baby Don't Cry, which is like, I don't know, what is it, pal, a $500 or $800 record?
It was a couple of years ago, but honestly, like in the last 3 years, everything shot up. So I could imagine it's double or triple that even.
All right. Well, apparently Egon got about 100 copies of that. And then I asked him again, I said, how many records did you get all together? And he put his hand up to his waist. So he bought, he brought a gang of records for $2 each. And then I know it for a fact what he did with some of it. He had a friend called Daisuke Kuroda in Japan. And those guys in Japan, they get all the rarest records in the world. And so he takes the records he gets from Eddie's Three-Way and he goes, you'll never see records like this again, and he's showing them to the Japanese guy. And then he's giving the guy one record and he's getting $1,000 record in return, So that's that one hit of going to that thing allowed him to really branch out and get a lot of stuff for his collection. And my collection kind of started like that too, because I was a journalist early on, and you get all free albums when you write for a paper. And mine was a very high profile newspaper. And so I got a lot of free records. And so I would trade them into a record collecting store. and then they would give me credit, and then I could buy the rare stuff I wanted to get. And so the essence of the foundation of my record collection, I didn't have to pay for. You know,
Wow.
it was parlaying. When I worked at Island, I could get free records. Then I would parlay those into more collectible records. So I was always parlaying records that I could get for free into the collector's records I wanted.
Yeah. Yeah, I think about that. It actually applies to even, you know, nowadays where I get sent a lot of promos from these newer labels. I'm sure Waxvillain does too. Although we both support these labels monetarily as well. It's important to do that. But yeah, you get your hands on a lot of things, you know, that you wouldn't have otherwise been put onto. And some of the stuff, a lot of it these days is really amazing stuff.
I'm proud of how the modern bands and modern artists are, they've really come along a long way. Like I can tell you 5 years ago or 7 years ago, there's hardly any releases that you could play in your set. I remember when the, what's that song that I'm Waiting for You, at San Francisco, that record that E the Boss did.
Oh yeah, that's the Pendletons.
Yeah, the Pendletons record that was from that period, like 5 to 7 years ago. That was amazing when it came out. Like it was a worldwide, you know, quality tune that could be played in any era, you know. So that was kind of one of the beginning cuts, and then it's slowly started to multiply. And now, you know, a lot of groups are hitting it now. You know, they're making strong records that you could play internationally. Yeah. And so that's a good trend.
Yeah, the new sound is amazing. I want to touch on when you were gigging in England. I know you were young then, like in your 20s. Was there a lot of competition then, or did you feel alone in what you were searching for when you were in England?
Great
like
question.
20s?
I think I was alone because I was American. So I have a completely different perspective. Like, you know, I got there in the early 70s, and they were still the record the biggest part of the record collecting market there was for 50s stuff. 50s American rock and roll, Gene Vincent, all that kind of crazy stuff. And so I wasn't competing with those guys, that's for sure, because I wasn't looking in that direction. I grew up with that stuff, you know? So I was looking for, you know, things that were interesting or exotic, you know. I mean, once I went to Liverpool, and, you know, I wasn't a huge fan of the entire Liverpool sound, but as a collector, I was curious, you know. So I went to this place, it was a record exchange, and this is like 1972 or 3 or something like that. And I said, hey, have you got any of those 45s by the beat groups from the 60s in Liverpool? And that guy goes, yeah, every time somebody brings in that kind of stuff, we throw it all in one big box. And so I looked through the box. There was probably like 300 or 400 records in there, 45s. And I go, you know, well, how much are these? And he goes, well, they're kind of like different prices. You know, some are like 50p. That would be like $1. And so I said, well, are you willing to sell the whole thing? And he goes, yeah, if you want. I think I bought it for like $30 or something like that. And then, you know, the record collecting market started. It's kind of like it started. The whole thing that's going on now kind of started in 1973. You know, a guy who can speak on this would be Craig Moyer. Like when I came,
I knew you were going to say him.
Yeah, when I came back from England and came back to the States, Craig Moyer was an active dealer at that time, and I used to buy records from him. So he's a guy that can kind of speak on what I'm talking about. But the very first publication that it spoke to us, like the kind of people like us, was called Rock Marketplace. And, you know, so they would sell all kinds of different records in the Rock Marketplace. They would have like features about groups, and they'd always talk about the records they put out, and you know, it was all kind of detailed around being a record collector. And then at the back, they had ads from sellers that were selling records. So that's where, you know, I dumped all that stuff. You know, I also, you know, got some good collectible items. Like there was a David Bowie 45 that way back then was worth a couple of $100. So, you know, I was able to sell those things to eager American people and stuff.
Very cool. Very cool. We've done some talks about your glorious digs. Now it's time for show and tell. I understand you have a few things you'd like to show, talk about, maybe play for us.
Yeah, I'm going to try to do it real quick. There's one thing that I wanted to introduce, and that's that. So I was my writing career kind of happened in an accidental kind of way when I got to England, because again, I just needed to be active in music, and the entire music business in the UK, in London, was kind of like a little village, So when I got to the point where I was writing at the NME, I got a chance to meet almost all the people in that village, the managers, the artists, the people that worked at the record labels. I met so many of them, and that's how I met Chris Blackwell, who owned Island Records. And so, I can't remember the question I was supposed to be answering.
No, it's all good. Just keep going.
Okay. So when I met him, we seemed to link in terms of our tastes. And so and he liked some of the things I was writing about. I wrote the 45 reviews in the magazine every week. So that's another place where I got a lot of my 45 collection, was from those 45s. But anyway, we remained close. Oh, here's the story I was leading to. So he called me one day and he said, "Would you like to go to a Bob Marley recording session?" I go, "Yeah, sure." So it was being held at Island over there in Notting Hill Gate, which is kind of by Portobello Road and all that stuff.
Danny, what year was this around?
1970, either late 72 or early 73, right?
Mm-hmm.
73 is what's documented.
Well, 73 is, they spent a while recording the album, but anyway, so I go there and I'm just watching them work for a couple of hours. They're doing overdubs on the whole Wailers group is there. Peter Tosh and Bunny and Bob and the other guys, and they were just doing overdubs primarily. Then they took a break, and Blackwell turned to me and said, "Would you mind listening to a cut for me? I'm curious if you think how it will be received in America." And then he played me Get Up, Stand Up. And, so I was hearing their version of it for the first time, and it was very slow. That's all I can tell you, is it was very, very slow. And so and then he looked at me when it was over and he said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well, it's an inspirational song. It's a song that I think people are going to relate to lyrically and stuff like that. But in our country, if you want people to fire people up about a song, it's got to have more pep to it. It's got to have more urgency, so people feel like standing and throwing their fist up in the air and saying, yeah, So he looked at the engineer, and I didn't know anything about how the studio worked at that time. I later learned when it started working it for Island. But he said to the guy, "Can you speed that up with the VSO?" And the guy goes, "Yeah, sure." So he turns it like one click, and then he plays the tune again, and it's slightly faster, just slightly. And then they looked at me and said, "What do you think?" And I go, "That's not right. And you have to do it again, So here I am, like a 22-year-old punk kid, and I'm telling all these recording experts how to the right tempo for the tune. And so they sped it up again. They looked at me and say, "How about now?" And I said, "That's it." And that's the way the world knows the song. They sped it up They didn't do anything different to it. They didn't touch it. They didn't add anything. They didn't do it. It's exactly the way it was when I first heard it, but they sped it up. So that's what I was going to play right now. I was going to give you an example of how slow it was when I first heard it. And then if I play it at the normal speed, you'll hear the difference in tempo. Okay?
Yeah.
Get Up, Stand Up has to be one of the most famous songs in history, right? Like I haven't looked
Absolutely.
up like where it charts, but
It's like in Bob's top 5 tunes. But I'm not getting any sound here.
It's okay if it's not working. No worries.
Wait, hold on. I don't understand. God damn it. I never have this problem.
It only happens when the camera's rolling.
I know. Yeah, I can't figure it out right now. It's I never have this problem, but of course it happens right now.
yeah.
Okay, it's okay. It doesn't take away from anything.
Yeah, so that was one thing I was going to play, and the other one. Hold on. I don't know. I can't even find. But here's a record that I got recently that I was excited about getting. I was after it for a few years, and it's the original version of "Who's That Lady," the Isley Brothers from 1964. And you have to go to YouTube and hear the tune because it's an R&B version. It's completely different than the 1972 version.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's really, really soulful, really, really good. So that's something that I've been playing. And then, that song called Haya by Outkast? Hey,
Yeah.
well, I got a version of that that's this is Brazilian. I mean, excuse me, Jamaican, right? And so they turned it into a weed song. And it comes to the chorus and they go, ganja. And then all the verses, they're singing about different types of weed. So I was going to play that one. And then Paolo probably knows this one. It's not necessarily a super rare tune, but it's by Bonnie and Clyde called I Want a Boyfriend. Do you know that one?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, this girl, she just sounds so desperate. And she goes, I want a boy. She's just like super hardcore about it. So there's a few things that I put aside that I was going to play you, but for some reason I'm not pushing the right button on the mixer or something.
So I wanted to ask for a get up, stand up. Like if somebody, like how much slower do you think it was? Like if you had to pitch it on your turntable, how much slower?
Well,
I almost want to go play the song and like hear it that way because I've not heard it that way.
it would have to be at least -4.
Wow, that's slower. Yeah,
At least.
that's pretty significant.
It would. And I'll tell you what my theory is, and I thought about this for years and years and years before I finally realized that these guys, their peak era and the thing that they really embraced was rock steady, right?
Mhm.
They were a group from early on, but the rock steady period was very generous for them. They had hits, around that period. That was the first time that they kind of rocked Jamaica and had big hits and everything. So I think what happened was when they switched into doing reggae and roots reggae, that they kept that tempo of dun 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 that they did their songs slow, right? Mm-hmm. And so somebody has to come around every once in a while and tap them on the shoulder and say, here's a Red Bull.
Pick up the pace.
Let's
you
get
didn't have
going.
to play the record. You sung it right there. That was great.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome.
So what else do you want me to lie about?
Well,
you're doing a great job.
yeah, you're fantastic. This is something that really stood out to me, and I caught this late in my research. But one of the things I heard you say was that your entrance into the music industry came through the journalism, the work at NME back in the day when we were interviewing David Bowie, Elton John, Stevie Wonder, and the list goes on. And I just thought it was fascinating that back then, at that age, that was your mindset and vision. What I'd love to know is, of all the people you've talked to, who was ahead of their time? What conversation really moved you the most? And I think, you and I can both say this, that sometimes the best stories actually occur when the camera's not rolling, it's offline. What stands out to you when you look back at the many interviews you've done?
Well, the one guy that qualifies for every aspect of what you just said is David Bowie.
Wow.
You know, I took what they call a minicab from my part of town, which was central London at that time, out to the village where he lived, and it's a famous thing that I can't recall the name of right now, but there was a name of his building where he lived, and someone else had the upstairs and he had the downstairs. It had really dramatic ceilings. Like his living room ceiling was like 20 feet high, you know. He had sparse furniture that was tucked against the walls. I walked in and we did a fairly short interview, maybe a half an hour or something like that. But we talked a lot after the interview. And so there was a stack of albums in the middle of the floor, like 40 albums. And I said, is it cool if I look through those? He goes, absolutely. So I'm looking through those records and kind of, filing away, the different titles. And I literally told him, I go, you got a lot of stuff in here that either I've been after or I've got in my collection and stuff. I'm seeing like the Pretty Things, and I'm seeing like what was the name of that group now? I can't remember the name right now, but anyway, I saw a bunch of things I recognized, but I didn't know how to relate it with what he does. I thought, well, Bowie's a fan of this music just like me. But what turned out was he asked me if I was interested in hearing some music that he was currently working on, right? So he played me 4 or 5 tunes. And at the time that I interviewed him, Hunky Dory had just been released, okay? That's where it was. And that was really the start of his boom period, Wow. From Hunky Dory on, he was solid for like 10 years, doing Ziggy Stardust, Aladdin Sane, and those records on the floor, that became Pinups, his album of covers.
Oh,
yeah. I didn't know that until those 3 albums later, he puts out Pinups, and I'm recognizing the songs from the floor, Wow. So Bowie was 3 albums ahead at that time, because the other 2 albums, Ziggy Stardust and Aladdin Sane, he played me songs from those albums too, right?
Wow.
So you're asking about somebody who's a visionary, who's way ahead. Bowie was 3 albums ahead when I was interviewing him.
Wow, that's incredible. Even the way you described the room and the furniture and the ceiling, I mean, that paints the picture for us.
Well, see, I'd seen him about 18 months before, and I'd listened to the interview again a few years ago, and I thought how different my perspective was about life and time, because I interviewed him and I said, I saw you a long time ago at the Roundhouse. It was about a year and a half ago. And I would never say that now. I would never say I saw you a year and a half ago is like 2 blinks to me, So he goes, yeah, I remember that gig. And at that gig, it was kind of unique. He played an acoustic set, and he had like 8 or 10 microphones on it. There were microphones everywhere, like all over his guitar, all over everything. And but his voice is kind of nasal and a little bit thin, right? So I really insulted him when I said what he described the Spiders from Mars, that it was going to be like this powerful rock band, and the guitar player it was along the lines of a Jeff Beck kind of guy. And I go, well, do you think your frail voice is going to be project over that loud group? And he laughed. He had a good sense of humor. He just laughed and said, yeah, I think I'm going to be okay.
That's incredible. Wow. What a story.
He was a really nice guy, really, really, really bright guy, and adventurous as well. Like, he's a true artist. Like, Bowie wasn't afraid to put his foot in any direction. He was, he liked some old corny stuff that most people couldn't relate to, because it was from the 30s and 40s and stuff, but he was very, very, very well educated about the arts in general. Like, one statement he made in the interview to me was, he goes, music is not the number one driving force of my life. It's part of the artistic things that I indulge in, So that was a heavy statement to me. Like, he was interested in theater, and all kinds of other stuff. And he ended up acting in movies and things. So Bowie was a real visionary guy and a real inspiration, I think, for being a true artist. Like Bowie could make up in his mind, like, okay, I need to do a more commercial album now and put out that album with Let's Dance and those kind of things, because he hadn't had a commercial record in a long time. And then, and then he'll decide later on, well, I need to do something that's thoroughly artistic, and that's kind of what he did when he went to Berlin with Eno and made 3 albums in a row. Those were eclectic at the time. Those were unusual. It was unusual for a rock guy to make a commercial sounding album using synthesizers. It was unusual at that time,
Wow.
So he liked corny old records like we do. Look at that.
Yeah. Bowie, he was a real dude. Like he was I don't know. He was, on the one hand, he was one of a kind, and you just have to admire his intelligence and his education about the arts in general, and his thoroughness and stuff like that. I mean, somebody told me about the song. I think it was Fame, and so Carlos something Aguilar or whatever what his last name is, he played lead guitar on that tune. And so everybody took a break from the recording except for that guitar player. He was tinkering around with his guitar, trying to come up with something that sounded original.
Mm-hmm.
And if you listen to the very beginning of the tune, it's just him kind of monkeying around with a real fuzz type of sound on his guitar and stuff. And so when Bowie came back from the break, Carlos said, hey, this isn't exactly right yet, but I want to see if you're into the feel of what I'm doing here. And he played him that thing, and Bowie goes, don't change a thing. Like,
yeah, that's one of my favorite Bowie songs, and it's because of that fuzzy guitar. So
yeah,
Wow,
but see, he was fooling around while Bowie was taking a break, and he thought he was going to have to rein it in so it sounded more commercial. But the minute Bowie heard it, he goes, you don't have to change anything.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So keeping in theme of journalism and interviews, not only have you written and contributed to Wax Poetics, but you've also been featured in it yourself. Not just a mention, but a 5-page article came out on Danny. I believe it was issue 66. That was the one with DJ Shadow on the cover and David Axelrod on the reverse cover.
That's right.
That's pretty huge. Anyone who subscribes to Waxpo and follows their contributions in the record scene can definitely appreciate that. Wax Poetics has become a legendary publication. Recently, an auction for Sotheby's for the entire catalog fetched $7,500, I think. So that's huge.
Wow.
And congrats to the homies at Waxpo. Well deserved. So Danny, how does it feel to be recognized by Wax Poetics and your peers for your contributions? I've known you as a pretty humble guy, but people have referred to you as a living legend. And I think that article kind of solidified that. You got to tell your story. You
can't answer that. It feels amazing because I was such a big fan of Waxpo. Again, my friend, close friend called B+, he was contributing to that magazine in the 90s when it first started. And along with Egon and kind of like the early version of diggers in our scene, these guys were doing trips abroad, and they were some of the few from the first guys to go overseas and go digging. So I even though I had already traveled and already dug in different places and everything, there were a few years there where I wasn't traveling that much. And so I benefited from the reading Wax Poetics as much as anybody else, so these guys were doing these guys were doing the traveling, and then they would pass on their stories and their tips and everything like that. And they talk about the records they got. So I feel like, I don't know, it's kind of like a ball player being in the Hall of Fame or something like that. For me to be, have a 5-page article in Wax Poetics is a dream come true to me.
Yeah. I used to just have those magazines on my coffee table, but now that I saw how much they went for, I put some of them on ice, like, oh, can't touch those.
Well, they want to do a big article on you, but they need a center spread with you in a bathing suit.
I'm going to be in the calendar, hopefully.
They're going to put 45s. That's my goal. They're going to put 45s over your boobies.
Oh God, that's
Danny. We have children watching. This is PG-13.
Sorry. I'm
just kidding.
But Yeah, you know what? I'm going to say this in public now because I've already told her personally, but I'm really so proud of her making the change to being a DJ now, and adding that to what she does already. And you know, she's gotten a strong reaction from people very quickly, and people. I know that I've talked to people in cities where she hasn't played yet, and they go, she needs to come here, you know. So she's got a lot of support from her online followers and stuff like that. So I'm really proud of her, and I think, you know, she's a person who's true when it comes to her enthusiasm for music, and she's and you know, she's a amazing digger, and she deals at a very high level with people that are at the top of their game coming to her for new joints. So I pay tribute to Paula Puente.
Thank you.
I want to back that up real quick. It was like a bucket list item for me to see Paula spin live, and I got to see her with Hot Peas and Butter earlier this year in Seattle. Everything you said, I want to echo that. She's just been a role model, inspirational over the years. When I was first getting into records, when I saw the Super Collectors, it was P. You know, she made it like cool to dive deep and get this knowledge and just keep going deeper and collect. And they would show and reveal things that like I had never seen before. But what she was really doing there was setting the bar for, if this is what you want to do, you got to do these kind of things. So I've always admired P, and
well, you know,
echo what you said.
I was telling her earlier, I think like maybe yesterday or something like that, and I said, you know, you're a bull. You know, that's what Taurus the bull, right? So, you know, you're strong, and you know, she looks after her child, her daughter. She works a job full time and does double duties a lot of times. She's just always on the go and manages to always do her music stuff on point. There's records get delivered on time. Every aspect is looked after. So she lives a really dynamic and thorough life. And she's always, you know, like I say, she's on point. She don't mess up.
Thank you, guys. And I'm going to keep the compliments going. And I just want to say thank you to Waxvillain. These interviews that you make happen, connecting the communities, that's super important. So super respects to you for that. I see you putting in the work. I see you grinding out the interviews, and it's so amazing to connect our community. And when we met in Seattle, you started something else. You started doing these sleeves, and dude, if you guys aren't up on these yet, these are so killer.
Thank you.
Please go get yourself some. They're just awesome.
You know, nobody discussed.
Thank you so much for that.
Sure.
Nobody discussed the fee for my interview today, but I think those 45 sleeves look kind of nice.
All right.
We already got a special pack for you. You know about it.
I need the gift bag.
We got you. We got you.
I'm going to need you to sign that Wax Poetics issue you're in. I have a copy, and I don't think you ever signed mine. Speaking of.
Yeah, well, let's get it signed. Let's get it signed while I'm still around.
That's right.
We hope you're here for a long time, man. Don't talk like that.
That's right.
She's used to it.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I'm waiting for you guys. You know what I wanted to mention though? Let me mention one thing while I'm thinking of it, and that's that in order, kind of like of a plug or whatever, there's I rarely promote shows on my own, you know, anymore, but I've got one going right now in Long Beach. It's the first Sunday of the month, and it's at the Bamboo Club, right, in Long Beach. First Sunday in the afternoon, and that's an all reggae event, right? And then I'm bringing back a successful club from 10 years ago, and Paula's going to help me out with the relaunch of this, and it's called Blazing 45s. And so we had a really popular night there for about a year, but it kind of faded after that because the essence of our night was that we had a big star. We had Kenny Dope. We had, you know, all these great DJs.
Rich Medina, DJ Scratch, House Shoes. There was a killer list of amazing DJs.
Yeah. So what I found out after a year is that there's only so many 45 DJs that people will pay to see. There's probably about 15 in the world that, and then you have to go, well, some of those guys live in Europe, you know, and then DJ Shadow only does his own shows. And then Cut Chemist only does 45 shows when he does them with DJ Shadow. And then J-Rock only does 45 shows with a Stone's Throw. And then the list keeps shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And that's why we had to stop it, is because it wasn't feasible. So now the new version of Blazing 45s is all about people like you, like people that have come onto the scene and been collecting in the last 10 years or so. And so now the idea of Blazing 45s is to feature these guys that have become the new crate diggers that have great crates. And so that's going to be, once we launch that, it's going to be at Alex's Bar in Long Beach. Once we launch that, it's going to just be, you know, like a self-perpetuating thing, because there's enough people in this community in LA to keep that going successfully without having to lean on international DJs and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
so,
we want to feature amazing people that don't normally get shine, you know, just low-key people, but they're definitely out there. Yeah.
So I wanted to mention those two things because, you know, the 45 afternoon thing just started a couple of months ago. And then the sometime before this summer, we'll get to doing Blazing 45s because the club's very excited about doing it.
That's super exciting.
You know, another thing I can tell you about is there was a period when a digger called Tom Noble was living out here in LA. He's from Milwaukee, and his brother had a label and had a record store and stuff like that. So I was hanging out with him in about 2005, 2006. And so we couldn't get booked. Like, we were super deep DJs, but we couldn't get a gig anywhere. And it turned out that all the nights were on lock. So one guy would get a gig, and then he would let his two homies play, and nobody else could get on. And it was like that all over LA at that particular time. So we used to drive all the way to Long Beach to Alex's Bar, actually. And so John Blunk from Sweater Funk, he's had a soul night there, a soul thing there in the afternoon. And so we went down there and played our record collectors records on the open decks. They gave us free barbecue, and we could drink as much as we wanted. So we were out of our heads, you know. And so once I played this tune, and John Blunt comes up to me and he goes, "Where'd you get that boogie track? That's really rare." And I go, "I don't know which one you're talking about," because to me, boogie at that time meant music that John Lee Hooker played and Canned Heat. This kind of blues that goes da 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 da. That's what boogie was. But they change, you know. Now they do. John from Sweater Funk just says, "I love you, Danny."
We love you. We want to come visit you in Sacramento, by the way.
That's right, John. Me and Paula are talking about taking a trip up to see you. So I hope you can. I don't know. We'll see you sometime in the next couple of months, hopefully.
Oh yeah, touching on the boogie thing and genres, it's like it's a very, very popular West Coast, Los Angeles thing, California sound. And it was when the term first came out, a lot of people were confused about it. They weren't really knowing what it meant, you know. So it's like modern funk, if you can classify it as that.
I look at it like it's early 80s synthesized funk.
Yeah.
That's the inspiration for it, you know? And like when I interviewed, the thing I was just talking about in Long Beach, the record that he was talking about was the LS Movement record, Move Everything You Got. And it wasn't known at the time. It wasn't in any collectors. Yeah, there it is. It wasn't in any, you know, collectors things or anything like that. So, you know, I ended up doing a deal with Dame Funk so that he could have the record and tour with it, because he was starting to tour around the world, and it made sense for him to have the record. But then
So Dame Funk is somebody who exploded that sound.
yeah, and still to this day, I hear from people in different parts of the U.S. and different parts of the world, and he's looked upon as, for being the leader he is. Like, he's the guy that brought that sound in, and there a lot of people came after him, and then they became territorial about the sound, and I thought that's weird. Like, he's the pioneer. He's the guy that introduced the sound.
Yeah, definitely. In my opinion as well.
Quick segue, if we could go to question 9 and 10.
So I wanted to talk about Danny's storytelling, because that's one of my favorite things about him. Hanging with Danny, he's always got an interesting or crazy story to tell. For example, the last time we spoke, I told him how my first concert was, I can remember going to see MC Hammer at Six Flags. And he totally taught me by telling me that his first concert was Elvis. So, I was like, oh, all right, well, you just one-up me on that one. Danny,
Well, like I said, I started with 45s, when I was 5. And my first show, I was 7 when I went to see Elvis Presley.
Yeah, that's crazy. You've met a lot of artists. Can you please share a few stories, like how you discovered NWA while at Island, or how your relationship with Sublime panned out? I know a lot of people are interested in that.
All right. Well, I had a hip hop label in the early 90s, and it was called True Sound. And then I had a hip hop radio show as well, and that was called Smoking Vinyl, and that's where my name comes from online. I just took the name of the radio show, and it's called Smoking Vinyl because we smoke weed and we listen to vinyl. So that's where it came from. And then what was the question again?
I wanted to hear the stories about NWA. You can start there.
Okay, so NWA, I was working at Island on the West Coast in LA in the mid 80s. And I worked there pretty much all through the 80s. And so my job was, I was the number 2 guy in publishing, like senior vice president of publishing. And I was the head of soundtracks as well for the label. And then, but I'd been there so long, I was at the label like over 20 years altogether. And I had a very strong relationship with the guy who started the label, with Chris Blackwell. So I had elbow room to like dip into other people's areas of responsibility and do things. So I could do A&R if I felt like it and stuff like that. So I used to go surfing down in Huntington Beach. And then on the way home, I would stop by VIP Records in Long Beach, the same neighborhood where Snoop grew up. And in fact, his very first video, What's My Name? He's on he's on the roof. He's on the roof of that store.
VIP Records.
But that's okay. So that was is 92 when he's on the roof. But in 86, I was going to that store and they used to get all the hip hop 12s from the East Coast, but they were sealed, right? And so they would take they would record each 12-inch onto a cassette. One cassette would be like a comp cassette of all the latest hip hop tracks, and then you would choose which ones you wanted to buy. And I heard Boys in the Hood on there way before it was ever played on K-Day, before it was known by anybody. And so I decided, yeah, I'm buying that record. And I bought it. It had a phone number on it. And I called the phone number and I said, hey, I'm looking for Eazy-E. And this old lady goes, who? I go, Eazy-E. And she goes, I don't know who you're talking about. And I go, well, I got this record and it says Eazy-E on it. And she goes, oh, you must mean my nephew, Eric. Well, she goes, I got 2 beeper numbers for him. And you know why he's got 2 beeper numbers.
Yeah, one's for business.
Yeah. So I called him up and he was a little bit nervous and kind of thrown off. Like, I guess maybe he thought somebody's pulling a joke or something. But I told him, I go, look, dude, I bought this 12-inch. I really like it. I work at Island. I'd like to have a meeting with you about this record and what else you're doing and stuff. And he goes, yeah, sure, we can do that. And he said, is it okay if I bring my producer? I go, yeah, sure, no problem. So he shows up with Dre, and so we had the meeting, and Dre hardly talked at all. Like, Dre was real kind of, I don't think he really knew what to say, or maybe Easy said to him, look, I'll take care of this. So Easy didn't know anything about the business either, but he knew how to kind of front, So I started talking to him then. We stayed in touch for a few weeks. They called me up one time and Easy says, we started a group. I go, really? And he goes, yeah, it's called NWA. And I said, what does that stand for? And he goes, can't tell you.
So the way you heard Boys in the Hood before it was released, did it sound like it sounds now?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was the same version, but it was just the very, very, very first release of the record. And then they just repressed it later and it became a big hit. But what I chose to do at that time, we had a West Coast A&R person. See, we were a satellite office in LA and the main office was in New York. So they had a person out here that did A&R, and her name was Kim Bowie. She signed Freestyle Fellowship and the Booyah Tribe and some other stuff. And so, I introduced her to the music of Eazy-E and Dre and those guys, and she liked it. And I said, you know what? It would be better especially since you're enthusiastic about it. It's better for me to pass it to you, and then you can take it to the label. And she did everything correctly. She got the label interested to the extent that the 3 or 4 people flew out here for a showcase. They had JJ Fad, the DOC, NWA, all these acts within 18 months had sold at least gold, right?
Wow.
You're being introduced to like a treasure chest of artists, right? And so again, I wasn't in control of it now. I kind of let it go on to the record company people. But I was very disappointed to hear that they didn't want to make the deal. And
they're lost.
Yeah, exactly. And so the way I look at it now is that they lost $1 billion worth of business, because the only reason Dre separated from Eazy was he wasn't getting paid properly, right? So if it was an island thing, Chris Blackwell would have stepped in and go, Dre, you don't have to go nowhere because we're going to pay you directly from now on. And he would have kept that relationship going with Dre, right?
Yeah.
So that was an unfortunate thing, but yeah, that was basically that story. I've got a few of them. Like I recommended to when I was in the number 2 guy at the publishing company, I brought him Nirvana, and they were being managed by a guy who was an old buddy of mine, right? So I said, so what's up with Nirvana? And the guy goes, well, the label deal is definitely going to be Geffen, but there's only one other publisher that's interested, and she keeps following the group from gig to gig. But if you come up with a good price, we can do the deal. So it was at $150 advance for the publishing, and I said, well, we can do $150, no problem. And then I got an approval to go to $175, and then it was lower. It was $125 to $150, and then my buddy that managed Nirvana said, if you come up with 25 more G's to 175, you can have the pump. Wow. And I go to my boss, who's like a really kind of a Moon and June kind of guy. Like he doesn't know much about rock, kind of edgier things and stuff like that.
So was this like early 90s?
Yeah. And so what he said to me was, he goes, well, punk rock's not really that big. That was his reason for not doing the deal.
Wow.
It's like, come on, man.
So you didn't even recognize it wasn't punk music. That's funny.
Yeah. So, I did some successful deals, like the Baby Got Back by
Sir Mix-a-Lot.
Sir Mix-a-Lot. Yeah. Like that was a situation where a legal guy called me and said, look, Sir Mix-a-Lot's pub is available on his next album. It's going to be produced by Rick Rubin, who hasn't done a rap record since he was at Def Jam, right?
Right.
And I already knew Sir Mix-a-Lot's history, all the way going back to square dance rap and that kind of stuff. I was already into some of his novelty things. And then when I heard that those two guys are doing an album together, I go, Rick Rubin, I'm not betting against Rick Rubin on doing a hip-hop album. I go, hell yeah, right? And so I left it in the hands of a business affairs person. And I was going to lunch one day with that guy, and he goes, hey, I closed the Sir Mix-a-Lot deal. I go, oh, man, that's great, because I have a good feeling about that. How much did it cost you? And he goes, $300,000. I go, $300,000? at the time, I hadn't even heard the music yet. I made the deal based on the people involved, right?
Right.
And but fortunately, you know, we had the wind at our back because that song makes millions to this day.
Mm.
Yeah,
And then
I'm sure it's still collecting royalties like a mother.
in the mid '90s, I left Island for a little while, and I went back. They asked me to come back and start a new Island publishing company in the mid '90s, and also to go back to my job of being the head of soundtracks. So but there were some weird attachments to how I can operate because Island had been bought by Polygram, which is a corporation, and they have a weird way of doing stuff. And so, like my very first signing for publishing, I wanted to sign this guy called Doug Rashid, and he had tracks that were already recorded by 3 or 4 artists. One of them was Montel Jordan. He was working with Coolio. He was working with different people. And so I said, I want to do this deal, but I had to have it approved by this other guy for some stupid reason. And so he goes, no, I don't want you to do the deal. I go, what are you talking about? And he goes, well, it's 100,000. It's kind of steep for a new guy. I don't think we should do the deal. I said, look, you don't know anything about black music. You don't know anything about what this is. And I do. So you have to trust me. And if I make a mistake, then you can slap my wrist next time.
Yeah.
And he came to his senses and he goes, okay, yeah, I'm willing to do that. So I made the deal, and within weeks, he co-wrote Gangsta's Paradise. It sold over 5 million.
That's awesome.
Wow.
That's a lot of label insight. Can you touch on the relationship with Sublime?
Sublime came to me via my nephew, Carlos. And when I had my little label called True Sound, he lived in Long Beach, and he was kind of doing A&R for me in different ways. And Sublime was a local group that was very popular in the OC and Long Beach. Kind of, it was kind of like the college-aged drinking scene. Like they used to get paid in kegs. They never got paid in cash. They would play house parties and say, "We'll do it for 3 kegs." That's how they would do their deals, and then they could invite all their homies, and they'd all get drunk on their ass on beer, right? So. At the time, they'd already released 40 ounces, which I loved. I just thought that's an incredible record.
Classic album.
And so I signed him then, and then it was so hard working with him because Brad had bad drug problems, and he had a buddy that he always every day they had to get out of their heads, and if they couldn't get money for drugs, they would sniff cleaning products. You know, they're that desperate to get out of their heads every day. So one time he called me to Long Beach for a meeting, and I never even asked him what it was for. I just thought, okay, must be important to him. I'll go down and see what's up. And I ended up meeting those 2 guys, the 2 guys that really like to get out of their heads every day. And it was in this one guy's house, and they started looking nervous, and they started to sweat from their forehead, and each one of them had a baseball bat in their hand. And I thought, I'm about to get jacked here. So what I did was, it was in the era of pagers and stuff like that. It was the early 90s.
Yeah.
And I hit my thigh, and I go, I'm getting a page. You guys got a phone here? And they go, nah, you got to go downstairs. I went downstairs, and I never went back again.
Don't blame you.
I wasn't about to deal with these guys who are like so out of their mind on drugs, you know.
Yeah.
Poor. I mean, I was really sad that we lost Brad, because I thought he was a real talent.
Super talent.
But you know, he walks. They're playing a gig in San Francisco. He walks into the drummer's room, who was also known to be a user, and sees all this heroin on the guy's bed, and that was it. That was the end of it. You know, he did a whole gang of it, and he died before the album ever came out. He never saw the group be popular.
Yeah, sadly, we lost him at a young age, like many artists to that, sadly. But you definitely made the right decision. I don't think I would have stuck around for that.
I'm still around to talk about it.
Yeah, those are some great stories. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Sure.
What is next for you? Like, what can we expect to hear from the label? Any releases you'd like to share, touch on? Upcoming shows? What do you think you want to achieve by the end of this year? I know we're halfway in.
I have a buddy of mine in Chicago called Esteban. He's a DJ as well. And we're talking about going to Brazil in October. So we're going to do a DJ tour. Jamaican music is really big over there right now. Really, really, really big. And so he loves Jamaican music. I've been involved with it for a long time. So we're going to go over there and tour together, and we're going to call it Double Trouble. So, you know, people will see us DJ separately and together, and we're going to try to make a show out of it, and try to build it maybe towards something where we can do festivals and stuff like that. Wow. So that's one thing. And then, I mean, in a way, there's not too many guys in my age group that are doing what I'm doing. But with the label, I want to do a second round of record club pressings. I'm planning 4 45s this time. And the price is going to be somewhere around 100 or 120. And it will include postage for the 4 45s. And they'll be exclusive to that one pressing. There will only be 300 copies pressed. And that's it. They'll never be repressed on 45s ever again by us. And so I'm looking forward to doing that. Then I got those 2 nights that I'm doing, one with you called Blazing 45s. And then I've got the reggae one going on right now. So I don't know. And then people keep hitting me up about my life story and my, you know, and so I'm working on that with different people. You know, so, you know, one person wants to underwrite the project for several books to be written. And then somebody else wants to film me and put it into like a compilation reel of people in the LA scene that they find interesting. And then they're going to pitch it to Netflix. So there's like all this stuff that's in the air that's, you know, leading into the future and stuff. So, I felt like for the last year or 2 years that this was going to be the year that was going to make a difference for me. And so it starts right now with talking to you guys.
I love that. Very exciting stuff.
Yeah, I think you've already made a huge difference. You've definitely left your imprint. You have your plate full as usual. You're always working on something. And it's awesome to see, you know, at your age, like that's just something so grand to look up to. So congratulations on all your success.
Thank you. Thanks. And thanks for having me on today. And I don't know if there's anything else you guys want to cover.
Oh, you're not going to get away without participating in the lightning round, Danny.
All right.
You're not going to be on here for an hour and a half and not do the lightning round.
Okay. So, all right.
The lightning round is designed to let the viewers know more about you as a person and
sure.
less in the industry.
Okay.
10 quick one-word, you know, types of responses. It's meant to have fun, so just rock it.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to kick it off. I haven't pulled up right here. Okay, let's go. LP or 45?
45, definitely.
Color vinyl or OG black vinyl?
OG black vinyl.
Favorite place to shop for vinyl?
Right now, it's 12s in Long Beach.
Yes, I love that shop. Shout outs to Hector. What's the first section you go to when you enter a record store?
It's 45s, damn it.
What's the latest LP or 45 you bought, or both?
Let me see that pile. I want to see if there's a recent one in here that I bought that I'm excited about. You know, I just got this one. It's by a guy from Cuba called Manteca.
Mm-hmm.
And he has incredibly funky tracks with bongos that are way too loud on top.
Super dope.
And, yeah, he's a bongo player. And so I got this 45 called Casas de Manteca. And it's super, super sick. So I was excited about that.
It's Cosas de Manteca, and it's very cool, you guys. Okay, what's something you listen to that would surprise us? I don't think I'd be surprised, but go ahead.
You know, I don't know. Like I like those sad Mexican songs. That, you know, I never know the lyrics. I always have to go call up a Spanish-speaking friend and say, "What are they saying in this song?" You know, and every time they go, "Oh, they broke up," and one of them wants to get back together. So I you know, I can hear that in the music without hearing the lyrics.
Yeah.
I can hear that. You know, in Brazil, they call it saudade.
Yeah.
And it's a feeling of wanting, of what we call, not nostalgia. What do we call it, Paula, here in this country? I can't remember. But anyway, it's
So we'll go with Mexican tearjerker. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is. So yeah, I like that, and I probably have my music taste goes to some music that people would consider corny. Like there's a version of a song, the old song that was Japanese called Sukiyaki,
Mm-hmm.
and I have a copy that I like a lot, and it's very kind of easy listening type of thing, and it's from France, so they're singing a Japanese song in French, and I like that one a lot.
That sounds awesome. Name a slept on Reggae 45 or LP we should go listen to.
You know, there's a song by Third World. A lot of people try to stay away from Third World because they don't think they're rootsy enough. But they've got this one song called Rhythm of Life. And it's just one of those real powerful, uplifting songs. And if ever you get down in the dumps about life or something gets you, depressed or one thing or another, you could listen to this song and it just brings your spirits up. So Rhythm of Life by Third World. And people sleep on this cut. Again, because they, enough people aren't checking for the group, but it's a dope cut, and like I say, it lifts people's spirits. So, there's a lot of things that I like really bizarre sounding records that they make in Jamaica with really loud effects and all that crazy shit. So I like that, and I like Lovers Rock, like I'm in Love by Jennifer Laura. I like those kind of tunes. So
which you released.
And I also love the rub-a-dub era, which is kind of similar to American rap. It was in the early 80s. And so the rhythms were hard. It was at the time when Yellow Man first emerged. The rhythms were hard, and the guys were just dope MCs, really, really good, strong MCs. So that was a strong period. So I don't know. That's some of the things.
That's good. If not music, what career path would you have chosen? Ooh.
I would die. There's only one thing I'm here to do. It's music or that's it.
I love that.
And I've already, Paula knows I was down in the dumps for a few years where I wasn't getting enough work and I was living in a motel and all this kind of stuff. And she used to come see me and stuff like that. And, if I was, a different person, I would have gone and got a job and dug myself out from under that. But I was enduring until I could make money again through music. So that's what I did. I just held on until and now I'm doing fine. I've been living in South Pasadena for 3 years now. And I've got plenty of gigs and, so I'm able to sustain myself. So it's going good.
You've always stuck to your passion and you've always been a free bird. It's something I admire about you. Next question. It is the lightning round. If you had a superpower, what would it be and why?
To get to all the good records before anybody else.
That's a good one. And lastly, if you had a theme song, what would it be and why?
Oh man, there's probably, what? For the sake of this, I'm going to say the song that you gave me. The one by the oil guy's son. A Love of Your Own.
Oh, Ned Doheny.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great Ned Doheny. He's one of our favorite. We always talk about Ned Doheny. Right?
Yeah, that's one of those songs that if you've ever been in love or got suckered into love or whatever, like that tune right there, it was just hit you square between the eyes. So
it's such a good song.
Yeah, and again, we're both Tauruses, and she gave me a copy from the UK, and that's always been a really special tune to me.
Wow. Absolutely fantastic lightning round. I just want to say thank you all so much for having the opportunity to share a live stream with you. Pete, fantastic job. Great questions. Danny, I don't know what to say. Amazing stories. We went over about 42 minutes more than we normally do, but we could have kept going. There's just so much. And I'm glad we got to document this, but please know you guys are both welcome back anytime you want.
Yeah, Paula said something about there possibly being a part 2 and a part 3.
All we do is part 2s. All we do is part 2s this year. We need part 2s for all the guests that come through.
Well, let's wait a couple of years and see if I'm still around.
You will be. That's your superpower.
That's my superpower, right?
I love that. Any last minute words for our viewers? P. Danny?
You know, there was something that I said to you earlier. It's part of my philosophy toward life. And, you know, you should decide the path that you want to be on and be committed to that path, regardless of what anybody else says. Or, you know, a lot of people that are closer to you, you know, like your family and sometimes even your best friends, they'll be critical or jealous or something like that, you know, or haters or something, one thing or another. And you really have all inspiration comes from inside you. You like, you can be influenced by trends, you can be influenced by what other people do, but if you're ever going to do anything noteworthy, you have to dig inside yourself. You have to go to your core. Your core is in your stomach. So you have to go to whatever the core of your soul is, and your story and your frustrations and your feelings, like all that's got to come out, you know. And you listen to a group like personally, I don't like perfect music. I like music that has flaws in it, that has human characteristics in it. But there's one exception in my life, and that's Steely Dan. So Steely Dan is actually a perfect group that makes perfect music, and that's the only perfect thing I like in music is them. But you know, everybody else kind of has flaws in their music and happy mistakes. That's one of the things you need to look for in life in general. You know, you maybe have your sights set on a certain thing, but always be open for happy accidents, because your whole life, it can change your whole life. You know, my whole life when I went to England changed. I went there for a look-see, and I ended up living there 5 years, meeting my future wife, and all this. My whole life changed, and the philosophy of my life. You know, I probably was as materialistic as anybody when I grew up here. After I lived in England, I was a different person. You know, I was committed to in my head, I felt like I wanted to live kind of a bohemian life. You know, I didn't want to live a straight life. I didn't want to be a boring kind of, you know, I didn't want to live that. I wanted to live an artist life, you know.
That's fantastic. You couldn't have said it any better than that. I'm so glad you shared that quote, because that was something we talked about before we went live. That was important. Right. So thank you so much.
Yeah. And well, I want to thank you personally, because we just met, but I'm already a fan. And so,
thank you.
You know, for you guys to allow me to come on here and drop my stories and you know, and illuminate some of my history, it's you know, it's a big deal. It's a big pleasure.
Thank you so much, Danny, for coming on. I always am a big fan and supporter of you telling your story to everyone, because I think you've lived an amazing life. You're still living an amazing life. It's just something to always look up to. I've always looked up to you in that regard. And I want to live my life like you do, deep into my old age, and still doing what I love to do. Like, your passion just outshines everybody. So thank you for that.
You know, one more thing I wanted to add, and it's like,
yeah,
you know, in the early 90s, you know, I had my own rap label or whatever. So I was in my early 40s, and I was wearing a baseball cap back then. And after a couple of years went by, you know, I started feeling self-conscious. Like, I think I'm getting too old to wear a baseball cap, you know? And I got over that hump, and and my realization was, I got to wear I'm comfortable wearing. I gotta wear what's, you know, I can't be overly concerned with how everybody perceives me. I have to be comfortable first, and then, you know, have whatever flavor I've got on top of that. So whenever anybody points me out and says, why is that old man wearing the clothes of a 17-year-old from the 90s? That's me.
Well said.
That is. I just want to shout out all the homies that are tuning in. Hi, everybody. So nice to catch up with y'all. Shout out to the Butter family, as usual, Scheme, Supreme. Shout out to the Sundown Soul Club and Benny here in Vegas. You can keep in touch with my events on my IG. Danny's, please go follow Zimeno Records for all the latest updates over there. I think it's important for everybody to go check that label out. Some amazing stuff has come out. Some amazing stuff will continue to come out. Just be in the know, stay connected.
And I don't know, you know, I don't have a list of shout outs to give, but Desirable D is a guy who invited me to do my reggae night in Long Beach, and he's a real solid dude. I just saw Jeannie's name go by, and she's a friend who DJs here in Southern California, and her husband is Hydro, and they have they're like a family of DJs, and they go out on tour in Europe and stuff like that. So there's a lot of friends and family that I'd like to thank, but I didn't make a list. Well, my friend Chris from Beaches as well. He's a big supporter.
Yeah. And of course, thank you to you again, Waxvillain, again, for putting these on and connecting us all and connecting our community. It's really important work you're doing. So much respect for that. Thank you.
I appreciate y'all so much. I don't have any shout outs, but I have a couple announcements to make. The interviews, the fireside chats are going to keep going. We got Height 5'7" on the way. We just confirmed Jake won today. So much more. Can't stop, won't stop with this stuff. I appreciate y'all for tuning in and all the support. We'll see you next week with another fireside chat. P, Danny, thank you so much. I hope y'all have a great night, and we'll be in touch soon. Video is going to get posted pretty soon. I just got to wait for it to download. Then y'all be able to stream it and share it. Thank you so much to everybody involved and those that tuned in tonight.
Thanks for all the listeners.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Viewers. All right, peace.
All right, y'all. Waxvillain, Seattle, Washington. We're out.